about. And that's really why we're going to be talking to you this evening, and none other than Judge Albie Sachs is going to assist us in doing that. So I hand over to our Judge President, Judge President Boqwana, and she will do introductory comments and will formally introduce our guest speaker. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Program Director, Judge Saldana, and Justice Albie Sachs and Vanessa, Judge Ali, DJ P. Cohen, and all the judges. Please wave your hand if you hear and listen to you, and magistrates that may be here, members of the bar, are you here? Yes. DPP and all the members of the NPA, members of Parliament, because I saw on the list that there are people from Parliament here, right? Yes, there you have. And Department of Justice, wave your hand. Okay, Tribunal Law. Yes, law clinics. That's right, and various other constituencies that are here. Have I forgotten any members of the bar, administration, anyone else? I think I've mentioned everyone. Good evening, and also our officials from the OCJ. Thank you for taking your time tonight and adhering to our and heeding the call to come and listen to our senior colleague, Justice Albie Sachs. As Judge Saldana said, it's the first time that we interact as the Judge President of this division. I'm a very new Judge President, only 8 months old. So I get to talk to you tonight in Ghana especially. I just also want to say thank you, because this is long overdue that we get to meet in this session. This entrenches the fact that despite our different backgrounds, ideologies, areas of practice in private and within government, we all have one common goal. What is that common goal? It is to promote justice and the rule of law. It is to ensure that everyone has their disputes resolved by the application of the law, decided in a fair public hearing before a court or another appropriate forum stated in Section 34 of the Constitution. Recently, we had members of the profession showing that they could also put aside differences and come together to support an initiative that we started in our court, which is the Pro Bono Help Desk. And that really is an important initiative to ensure access to justice, because access to justice, as we all know, remains elusive to many South Africans who are largely not familiar with the legal system, who are not aware of their rights and not able to afford legal representation. And this is where the duty.
Sorry, I'm communicating.
So this is where our duty as lawyers comes in. How do we, as Abantu, that means human beings, how do we practice Ubuntu by giving back to our society? I don't need to explain what Ubuntu is. We all know this by now as lawyers. But I'm not here to give a speech. That will be done by our keynote speaker, who will reflect on the topic, thoughts and dilemmas of being a lawyer in an unfair society. You may ask yourself, why do we have this event today? I think it's always important for us to pause and think deeply about where we are in the society. What challenges are we facing, particularly as professionals within the society? And how do we deal with the tensions that remain in our current dispensation, which may necessarily call for us to make choices? Our society faces enormous challenges, some of which are systemic, But I also want to reflect on the challenge that we're facing of security crime. This morning we went to Mitchell's Plain. I'm sure all of you read about what occurred 2 days ago, where 2 people were gunned down in front of the court gate. A few months ago, we had somebody being shot at inside a court in a court in Wynberg. And so we as stakeholders need to reflect and ask ourselves, why are people not scared of even a court? When that court is actually next to a police station. We have prosecutors, we have counsel, we have lawyers that are being gunned down, witnesses taken out every day. Our systems and our society needs to reflect on what the challenges are and how we can be able to overcome those challenges. But challenges are actually wider than what I'm talking about, and I'm not here to talk about that today. Today's topic is also important because when you consider our country's historical imbalances and social inequalities, lawyers are confronted with those difficulties on a daily basis in their practices in our courts and in society. How do we remain positive and enthusiastic and willing to serve despite the challenges that we face in our society? What about our moral duty of being ethical and the duty to uphold the rule of law? Have ethical standards changed? Are there fine lines that we have to navigate in our society? You'll agree with me that it is most fitting to have Judge Albie Sachs as someone who has traveled many of these paths as a person, as a lawyer, as an activist, as a judge, and you name it, and most of all, as an elder in our society. It's an honor for me to introduce him to you. I know that it's going to make today's discussion vibrant and insightful. I've learned a lot from him every time when I've engaged with him and listened to him. Even this afternoon when he spoke to us as judges, he left us with some very deep thoughts for us to reflect on. Justice Sachs is one of the most distinguished South Africans. He is renowned for his lifelong commitment to human rights, anti-apartheid activism, and constitutional justice. Born in Johannesburg in 1935 into a politically active family, Justice Sachs developed a strong sense of social justice from an early age. As a young law student, he became involved in the struggle against apartheid and participated in critical campaigns such as the Defense of Unjust Laws campaign at the University of Cape Town and witnessed the adoption of the Freedom Charter in Cape Town in 1955. For those who may be unaware, the Freedom Charter is considered the founding document of a free South Africa. It forms the basis of the Bill of Rights included at the beginning of the country's 1996 Constitution 30 years later. In his early 20s, Justice Sachs represented victims prosecuted under apartheid's harsh laws, despite risking police harassment, raids, as well as being detained twice without trial. Like many apartheid activists at the time, Justice Sachs went into exile in 1966. Despite being in exile, he continued his legal and activist work abroad, managed to get a PhD degree at the University of Sussex in 1971, and taught at the law faculty of the University of Southampton until 1977. Justice Sachs also worked on family law reforms in Mozambique and was the director of research for the Mozambican Ministry of Justice. In 1988, Justice Sachs survived a terrible car bomb attack by apartheid secret agents while in Mozambique, which cost him his arm and the sight of one eye, but he persevered with remarkable courage. Shortly after returning to South Africa in 1990, Justice Sachs was a key member of the Constitutional Committee, which drafted the country's post-apartheid constitution following the first democratic elections in 1994. He was appointed by President Nelson Mandela to serve on South Africa's first constitutional court, where he served a 15-year term, helping to shape the post-apartheid constitution and influencing landmark legal decisions. The influence of Justice Sachs' work extends internationally as well. For example, example, he has contributed to global human rights and is a member of the United Nations Educational, Scientific and Cultural Organization's International Bioethics Committee. He has helped to draft the International Declarations for Human Genome. Through his time as a judge, Justice Sachs has received numerous honors for his commitment to justice, peace, and promoting a free society. As a retired Constitutional Court judge, he continues to work to make South Africa a better place for all who live in it. In January this year, he turned 90. To mark this milestone, an online resource was launched titled The Albie Collection, a curated conspectus of the life, love, law, literature, and laughter of Albie Sachs. You can go to www.thealbiecollection.com if you want to know more. .org, not .com. All right, thank you, Vanessa. Justice Sachs is a family man. He's married to Vanessa, who just corrected me now about that time. And he's a father of three: Alan, Michael, and Oliver Luca Otado. You know what Luca Otado means?
There is love.
There is love, that's right. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me and let's put our hands together as we welcome the one and only Justice Albie Mabindla. Thank you.
Hello, everybody. The one and only Albie Sachs is a liar. And he started his legal career as a liar. Not far from here, in what was then the Cape Good Hope Provincial Division of the Supreme Court of South Africa. Why do I say that? Become an advocate, I was through the age of 21. I had to swear an oath that I would uphold the Constitution and law of South Africa. I hated the Constitution of South Africa. I loathed the law of South Africa. And I said I would uphold it. I'm a lawyer by day and an outlaw revolutionary by night. So how was it possible to manage that? It's 1957, January. Our first case is a death sentence case. That's the way you started practice in those days. You'd be called a pro reo defendant appointed by a judge to defend somebody facing a possible death sentence. That is very convenient because nobody should be hanged if they had a legal practice. And here was somebody straight out of university. We didn't use privilege in those days. We needed to get some practice. So we practiced our practice on capital punishment cases. I was convinced my client was going to be hanged. She was a woman. She'd been rowing with her husband. She'd gone to the kitchen and it sort of bundoki. He picked up a knife and stabbed him and he died. I'm speaking to her, she explains the circumstances. In those days, if you're guilty of murder, the death penalty was automatic unless you could show extenuating circumstances. The onus was you to do that. And I remember the details of my argument. In those days, the judge would sit with two assessors. But I made my argument, and lo and behold, the judge took some time, came back to court, and found the accused not guilty. But from being in the depths of despair, I'm now the most delighted human being on earth. And I thought I was clever. Well, the clever thing I did was to be appointed by Judge Joseph Epstein. In all his 20 or 30 years on the bench, he never sentenced a single person to death. He would say, it's pure chance, the cases that came to him. And I must have now, in my 9 years of practice, had about 30 defendants in 9 years facing the death penalty. That was standard for a young advocate in those days. And you learned to start with murder cases, and if you were really good, you would graduate to theft, embezzlement, well-paying clients. That first year was horror. If my phone didn't ring, here I'm a total failure. If my phone rang, I got into a panic. I wouldn't go through that first year again for anything, but I'm not likely to do that. But it was being constantly in a state of dread that I would go into court and the judge or the magistrate would say that Mr. Sachs, what about? And they'd mention some case that everybody else in the court knows, and you're the only one who doesn't. It never happened. And I don't know what happened, but a year passed from the second year onwards. If I didn't feel anxiety, I was worried. You needed that for the adrenaline to keep going. And it was a strange world to be in. I'd grown up in a communist family. My mother would say, tidy up, Uncle Moses is coming. Uncle Moses wasn't Moses Cohen, Moses Kantanowicz, he's Moses Kutani. And he was the General Secretary of the Communist Party. And my mother was what was called his typist. So I grew up in a home where it was natural for my mother, a white woman, to look forward to the visit of her boss and to make sure that everything was tidy and that she was able to hand him the work that he needed. That was normal, natural to me. And her friends would be, she was separated from my dad, who was the General Secretary of the Garment Workers Union up in Johannesburg. Many of them women, independent, strong, trade union activists. I got excited one day when a friend, Pauline Podbury, middle of a strike, had lain down in the road to prevent a lorry with scabs getting through to the factory. And the pictures in the newspaper. Oh, excited. That was the world I was growing up in. Strong, independent women. And people fighting against the injustice of society. And I go to the magistrate's court. I have to make sure I go in the entrance for whites only. I have to sit at the table for whites only. The case I thought that long name that it had was unique in South Africa. It was the only court that didn't have apartheid signs. And that was because the president of the court, that stage when the apartheid had been put in there, under his bias, literally told them to fuck off. He was very rude and very crude. That president can be rude and crude in something. One of us probably said. He says, this is my court. You won't have apartheid signs. He didn't have to have reject a sign for robing room for black advocates because there were no black advocates. He didn't have to worry about where women advocates would put on their gowns because there were no women advocates. It wasn't a rule of law. It was a given, a statement of existence that the bar was for white men. I don't think it was even in the statutes. It was just absolutely taken for granted. Years later now, we would meet in our common room for tea. Dirty jokes, gossip, skinner, funny things that happened in court. It was convivial. We looked forward to the tea, getting together. It was less boring than preparing cross-examination, looking at cases and so on. And I remember one day now towards the end of my stay, my brothers at the bar are snorting. Have you read? Can you imagine? There's a woman called Felicia Kentridge who's been admitted to the bar in jail. That could never happen here. Can you imagine? We can't tell our jokes. They literally said that. It was like inconceivable. And in fact, we got the first man of color before the woman came to. It was easier to imagine Ben Keith becoming an advocate than Felicia Kentridge, the captain. The bar dinner would be spoken about, yes, in reverential terms. I didn't have much money. Half the work I did without managing to all the political work. And I got that idea from Lionel Foreman, an advocate a bit ahead of me. He'd been arrested, put on trial for treason, up in Johannesburg, Pretoria for months. His chambers are vacant, and he's looking for a lieutenant. I'm looking for chambers. I take over his chambers. And I'd say, Lionel, what discount do you give for political matters? He said, I don't give a discount. I don't charge. These are people being prosecuted for defending apartheid, system apartheid, and defend them without charge. It was such a gift to me, made life so simple. I felt I could throw my energies into the case. It didn't depend on fee and money fee. And people from poor communities and great people being harassed and persecuted in ways that I'd be protected from that stage. He had another principle that was totally unusual. He said, Albie, you know, all my colleagues, their biggest problem is their clients are so stupid. Their clients don't listen to them. And he said they have the relationship completely wrong. You are there to represent the client, not to control the client. You tell the client what the options are, the client is choose. And in those days, it was unique for an advocate to have that kind of approach. So that's another gift that I got from him. And then many of our clients would be poor people. There were just two native locations, as they were called in those days. The Langa and Yanga, before Guguletu, long before the other townships that were set up. And I would have what my colleagues called an Albie consultation, where the whole group would come, 10, 15, 20 people. And I had a couch. Lionel had a bad heart. He had to lie down. About 10 people would sit on the couch and the others would sit. And again, something that I learned from the clients that I had, people with maybe 4 years schooling. It could be petrol pump attendants, could be factory workers, could be gardeners, delivery people, many from the trade union movements. A very acute sense of law an understanding of the issues. And they would want me to explain what are the issues. They didn't want me to make up defenses for them, responses for them. They wanted to know what the issues were. They'd have their consultation. They can also come back to me and say, we feel this is what we want to do, this is what the strategy. So it's a different kind of practice in that sense from most of the context. The other half of my practice was just some commercial work, occasionally in the course, ordinary crime. And I enjoyed it. I remember putting on my gown and going down the corridor, gown flying behind me and feeling I'm going into action and I'm going to argue and appeal and I'm going to cross-examine and you regret the cut and thrust, the questions from the bench, the separations. In a way, it prepared me for public speaking because you had no way you could stand up and read out the argument. You get to line 2 or 3, there's a question from the bench. So what you needed was a structure, a logic. And you can start with that. The questions come, you've got the structure. The response is fitting in to the framework. And now here I've got almost 70 years later, a kind of a structure. So part of me then was delighted. And part of me was just angry. It was so unfair. It wasn't just the signs. The signs were the overt symbols of segregation. The judges were white men. The magistrates were white men. The registrars were white men. The clerks of the court were white men. I actually took part in 2 jury trials. They were white men. That was actually in the description that when women got the vote, white women got the vote, they didn't give the right to sit in juries. So that whiteness was official. The laws were made by white men with 1 or 2 women involved. They were enforced by police commanded by white men. The witnesses, the main witnesses would be white men. And the laws that provided the framework was so much of what I was doing. Was so-and-so being a native, remained in an urban area for longer than 72 hours without permission. So-and-so went into a native location without permission. Chris Harney's father, Martin Harney, Gilbert Harney, being a native, traded in longer location without permission. That case, the weapons of crime, some boot polish, some laces, some candles. These were the exhibits to prove that he was trading without permission. Even the magistrate there, or the native commissioner, found it like ludicrous. And I said, there's no proof that he actually traded, found him not guilty, and I went out and there was one of his cards. So the laws were oppressive laws. And then the common law was applied in a way in which racial assumptions to just says this problem. Murder. When I thought back, what were the two factors that decided whether your client faced a death sentence or not? We use a horrible word. Is it a swinger? Is it a swinger? You know, you develop that language to deal with pain and cruelty. And what made a case a swinger? You'd think it was the cruelty, the preparation, the premeditation, etc. There were two factors that were overwhelmingly significant. One, let's see if any of you can think. What is the number one factor? Most important factor.
The race of the accused.
And that's not enough. Most of the accused were black.
But you're on the right track. There you go. Race of the victim.
The race of the victim. Black on black, no swinger. White on white, no swinger. White on black, no swinger. Black on white, swings. Same cruelty, same act, same deed, same impact. That is the most important factor. Capital punishment from that point of view was seen as a central part of the system of white supremacy. It was the ultimate response to blacks challenging white supremacy. And it could be rape by a woman, by a black man. It could be the killing of a white man, a white woman, a black person. That was the most important factor. What was the second most important factor? The judge. The judge. Justice Bernstein in 25 years didn't send a single person to jail. John Didcot in Durban, 25 years, didn't sentence. John would say, it just so happened that the cases that came to me. So a person's life then didn't depend on what he or she had done, or what the law said. It depended on the race of the perpetrator and the victim and the judge. You handle these things as well as you can. But one reason my generation hated capital punishment so much was that it wasn't just like a pure form of law. It was embedded in the deep fractures of our society and reinforcing those fractures. And we've lost some of our leaders. You see the meaning. The wonderful trade union leader sentenced to death, going to the gallows. He was a songwriter singing one of his own songs. And all the black prisoners would join in the singing. Our friend Ben Turok was up in Victoria Central Prison, and he used to hear beautiful, wonderful English singing, and then silence and capital. But part of that sense of injustice that you have. When it comes to cross-examination, I still remember there was one case I was in, and there's a white woman who's giving evidence, and the judge says, well, Mrs. Smith, now just tell us, what did you see working here? And an African woman older than the white woman, and the judge says, Rosie, what did you see? Now I'm going to ask her questions. And how do I address her? I can't call her Rosie. She's old enough to be my mother. But if I call her Mr. Shabalala, it's like I'm picking a fight with the judge, and he's going to be angry with me, and he'll take it out on my client. You have those mental gymnastics all the time, trying to retain the dignity of the people in the process, your own dignity, in that racist kind of a setting. When I got the cases that weren't capital punishment cases and that weren't political cases, I could be very happy. It's bringing a bit of income. And one day an attorney who had never briefed me before says, Advocate Sachs, very good reports about you. I've got a case of two youngsters, children of clients that I know, and they've been involved in this old case. So I'm feeling very delighted. And it turns out that what they've done is they've been waiting at the subway, Mowbray railway station. A young black man had come in, they beat him. And I've agreed to take the case. And you can't take a case and then renege on it. I had to find a way. And I think I did find a way. And I said to the parents and to the boys, are you willing to acknowledge what you did? And are you willing to pay some compensation for what you did? And then we can avoid you getting caning, which they would have got otherwise. And they were only too happy. And the young black guy who made the complaint couldn't believe it. He got an apology, and he got some payment that he couldn't afford. And I'm giving a sigh of relief. I wasn't defending a white racist as though what was done was defensible, but finding a way forward that I think ended up beating them wouldn't have done the world any good at all. It wouldn't have helped the complainant either. Let me give you some other ideas of the sorts of activities you had when you were defense counsel in this unjust setting. It's 1960, it's after Sharpeville. And it's pretty excitement in the country. Winds of change, Harold Macmillan in Parliament, Sharpeville captured on TV going around the world. And Advocate Gerald Gordon comes running down the corridor to speak to Advocate Harry Snitcher, both Queen's counsel for the space. Harry, have you heard? He said, the natives are marching. Now, Gerald always spoke about Africans, but somehow at that moment, the natives are marching. And they're coming over the Bar Drive, and they're coming down, thousands of them to Cape Town. And my heart just sinks. It's the day we've been waiting for them in the struggle in the underground. But I'm banned, I can't join in, I can't attend, I can't get too close. So I leave my chambers and I rush across Logan Street, and I see them coming down, thousands. And it just like wonderful. And then I go back to my chambers and I hear that the news says that the leaders, Philip Lasana, had spoken to the police and the mediators and been told, go back to Nyanga, and tomorrow the Minister of Justice will discuss the past rules with you. So they went back, they woke up and they found the township surrounded by police, even the Navy were moved in. state of emergency declared, people arrested and detained without trial. State of emergency. And after a couple of weeks, I'm told 3 of the people who'd been put on trial were actually ANC supporters, not Pan-Africanist Congress supporters, and 23 others in their trial were from the PAC. The PAC then said, no bail, no defense, no fine. The ANC wanted their lawyer. It's called the People's Lawyer, Albie Sachs. So it's one of the most fascinating trials that I was involved in. I found, by the way, when I met older lawyers, all the cases they spoke about were cases that they'd won. Amazing legal system, people only won cases. Nobody ever lost a case. And I'm now meeting with the accused, and there was no point in separating my 3 clients from the others. So it ends up now, the case is before the magistrate, and they're charged with sedition. And it's based on statements they made. It wasn't a criminal offence to march. Maybe a bylaw that they could get. I think it was before we had rams then, £1 fine or something like that. So based on those speeches. And again, that discomfort you feel doing your ordinary work as advocate. I'm cross-examining Sergeant Shabalala. I use Shabalala as my key name for that person. And I want to prove the notes that he took at the meeting are completely unreliable. I'm hating it. I'm hating being the smart, clever white man, telling this black person who English is bad, your grammar is bad, you can't take proper notes. But I've got to do it. That's my Albie discomfort as a human being. He's gone over to the other side. He's with the security police. He wants to get a conviction. The amusing part of the case was when I sat down, then Philip Kasana would get up. I'd say, I'm going to point to you, Anthony Defender. Sergeant Shabalala, I put it to you that you misheard the word, you spelled it wrongly, you changed. I sit down. And the next thing I see is Philip Kasana standing up and saying, he's pointing his finger exactly the way I pointed it. Shabalala, I put it to you that. And he sits down, and Clarence Mabindla gets up and says, Sergeant, I put it to you that. He sits down, and Lawrence Mabindla gets up, I said, I put it to you. It's like I was being cloned. Yes. And again, that thing now. I'm not ideologically an Africanist, but this I discovered in practice the acuity, the smartness, the sharpness, the questioning that was examining by people who had never been trained as lawyers. You know, this was quite remarkable. And a lot of these cops were not clever. They didn't write good English. They didn't make good notes. Then they would correct their notes at night to correct the mistakes in different colored ink. So there we are doing our job, cross-examining. And finally, it's to lie. The court breaks. We've really destroyed the evidence. And I've asked the accused, we've now heard the prosecution case. Are there any witnesses you like? And they said, yes, we'd like to call Robinson Boqwana. So I say, fine. And somebody comes up to me and he indicates his PAC. He says, "Can I carry your bag in for you?" That's in South Africa. He carries my bag. They don't even ask for his name. They see him as my boy. Now, normally I'd never allow anybody to carry my bag. I hate that idea. This time I said, fine, he carries my bag in. And he was able to speak to Sobukwe. And I was impressed. He was thoughtful, he was wearing short pants, sandals, anywhere that I can help. I think he was pleased that I came to see him and was willing to acknowledge the role that he had, and he said, "We're only too happy." And of course, they would have loved him to come down. He would have loved to get out of prison to go to the court. I get back, I've been driving all the way, and my mother went overseas, she had small inheritance. But the phone had been cut off, and I wake up, and the court starts at 8:12, and it's fine. It's your nightmare. 10:30, I'm in court. What are the apologies? And I say, I've got no excuse. I can only say sorry. Weren't you feeling well? Weren't you feeling ill? Now, this was super honest. And I say, no, I'm sorry, I have no excuse. He said, I'm going to write down that you were feeling ill. And there's no Philip Osana there. He skipped back, he'd gone to his Lesotho land. And everybody was happy because now the magistrate could dismiss the accused because the number one is gone. The prosecution saw that they had a useless case. The magistrate would have felt he'd have to find the people guilty because, after all, these were troublemakers. But he'd write a long judgment and be able to turn on appeal. Now all he has to do is say not guilty. And of course, the accused were only too happy to be released, and I was only too happy. And I remember saying at the time, to carry on with the trial now is like playing Hamlet without the prince, because he was called Prince Philip Osana. So that was before the cases became horrible. From 1962-63 onwards, it's now Sabotage Act. It's now the Detention Without Trial. It's now the Terrorism Act afterwards. And we didn't win acquittals like that. So 50s, winning cases, often on appeal. And if you're doing a job, often defending workers, there was a strike, black workers in Tilburg, Food and Canning Workers Union. And I remember going there and man, that awkwardness you feel. There's one hotel, that's the hotel where the white officials go for dinner. They have their beers, they get together. And I'm in that hotel, and they see me as like a fellow professional. And meanwhile, there's a waiter there, the waiter's from the community, and he's seeing what this white advocate from Cape Town, which side he's on. I don't want to be rude to the magistrate. I don't want to be pushy to the prosecutor. I can't sit with them, I can't chat to them. You're living all the time in this white racist society. It's overwhelming you. You're trying to keep your dignity. Another side of me is very, very, very law-abiding. When I abide by the law, I really abide by that law. And the bar rules were very, very strong. And it meant you took cases that came to you. It also meant you had to charge a minimum fee. It was a gross violation of our ethics to take cases without payment. why you see it as undercutting, you're securing clients in that way. So half my practice was violating that bar rule number 1, thou shalt demand a fee. I never made up stories for my clients. And it was important for me as an advocate to have that coherence and sense of integrity fulfilling your role. The bar was very strange, very contradictory. On the one hand, there would be great conviviality, great support for your colleagues, in and out of each other's chambers, helping each other. On the other hand, any dirty trick you could use to defeat your colleague in court, you could use. Very competitive, very, very collegial. I think I can say I was never on the competitive side. And very, very collegial. And very good friendships, even with people often quite conservative. They were my colleagues and we in this profession. But when I did break the bar rules, I did it in spades. With the non-charging amateur fees, but also I had a certain client called Martin Harney, who's funny. And we were in the underground together. We used to actually meet on the mountainside over Britain. Under a tree, and I remember Craig Conniston saying one day it was raining, welcome to our boardroom. And the boardroom was a particular oak tree that was there. And he's convicted of being in a car that had some ANC leaflets in the boot, and he's sentenced to 2 years imprisonment. And I took some technical points. The charge was you carried out ANC activities, asked for further particulars. What were they? No particulars were given. Then I said the charge was void for vagueness, and the magistrate wasn't interested. I'm sure they would not appeal. We went on appeal. We just happened to get the 2 most reactionary judges. We didn't follow our precedent there. Holding the conviction. And Chris said, if I go inside, I'll never be released. But it's okay. So I told the story before. You can chuck me out of the bar if you like. I helped Chris escape. And it wasn't easy. Escaping from Joburg, you could go to Swaziland, you could go to Swaziland. That time you had to get to Joburg first to escape. And we didn't have phone call, personal phones in those days. Phones were all tapped. Our letters were all intercepted. Our offices were bound. It took about 6 weeks to get a car. And I remember when I went to find the driver to take them to where Chris and Archie Becker was the other was in hiding. A young student called Peter Simon had a place near UCT. We had to go onto the edges of Langa. And I had 2 very strong black men on either side of me with big, not kiwis, with the dogs. It was like going into hell. I don't know if they were trained to bark at you. They would beat down the dogs. It was like really hell. Getting the car, driving down, and was left. So that's the world you're in. I'm functioning as an advocate, very faithful to the bar rules. Taking the money, it's a kind of violation, but wasn't done to get clients, wasn't for touting. Very coherent, very correct, but helping the client to escape on the other hand. And not feeling guilty or worried or anxious as an advocate. I was anxious I might be caught, but I didn't have an internal conflict over it. Now, I mentioned that just to conclude there. It's different today. Our society is still very, very, very unfair. It's still very, very, very unjust. There's still massive inequality. There's still plenty of racism. It's not so overt. Sometimes it's even overt, but it's in practice, assumptions, attitudes, just feelings about yourself and others. But there's a huge difference today. We've got a constitution. We've got values. We've got civil society. It's not just rights that are mentioned there. We've got people working on these things. And the law can play a huge positive role. Then the law was against us. We had to trip up the law. We had to subvert the law. We had to avoid the law. Now we use the law. Those of you who are prosecutors, we were so angry with the prosecutors who were challenging our leaders and putting them on trial. And now you're doing so much to uphold the integrity of our society, to hold people to account. The law in that sense, from being an instrument of suppression that you had to manipulate or avoid, escape from, now the law becomes something that can be used. And it's not just because I'm saying so. The 490 people who created our constitution in Cape Town over 2 years, with millions of people intervening from the public, throwing in, putting in their suggestions, huge debates. Most of them had been in prison. They'd been not only subject to past laws and immorality and prosecutions and false dispossession and so on. They felt the sting directly. Many had been brutalized, tortured. They dreamt of a society where these things wouldn't happen again. They dreamt of freedom and justice. And the woman was saying, we don't want to hand over power from one gang of men to another gang of men. We want our rights as women, as active. It's the most gender-sensitive constitution in the world that was produced. It's the most labour-friendly constitution in the world, with the right of fair labour practices in the constitution. Take it for granted. The right to collective bargaining, the right to independent unions, all of these things are one. Rights we just take for granted as ordinary practice today. And people are speaking about what does the Constitution do? So we've got a Constitution that's on our side, made by people who've been in the freedom struggle, who said never again, and this is the country we envision that we want, for transformation and change. And we've got the professional bodies, the civil society bodies that are in tune with the Constitution and constitutional. And we can be proud to be prosecutors. We can be proud to be lawyers. We don't have that anguish and anxiety we have. And those of us who want to be on the side of the marginalized, the dispossessed, we can do so knowing the law is on our side. The law itself, the Constitution itself, will change nothing. Parliament, agency, action, employment, production, a whole range of things are needed. But we can be in tune with our beliefs, in tune with the Constitution, in tune with colleagues, in tune with people who are struggling for their rights, in a way that was absolutely impossible. We had to be disformed. We had to be disruptive. We had to be defiant. We had to live double lives. Now you don't have to live double lives anymore. If the will is there, the instruments are waiting for you. And you get connected with others who are fighting and struggling in their different ways for the rights that mean so much to my generation. Over to you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Justice Albie Sachs. So at 90, if we are as lucid and as clear and we have a memory like this, then we would be really fortunate. And what Justice Sachs has done and said for us tonight is that in order for us to understand the present and prepare for the future, we need to understand the past. And that's really what we've learned tonight. In order to fully appreciate what we have today and what we may build on for tomorrow, it's understanding where we come from, where our parents come from, where our grandparents come from, and their forebears. And that's just axiomatic for any lawyer in any profession. And so thank you, Justice Sachs, for sharing with us where you've come from. But it's not just where you've come from, it's also from the people that you represent, ordinary South Africans, human beings. And they sought justice, and there were lawyers who were prepared to meet them out and to assist them. So now the floor's open, and you get your chance. It's almost like once in a lifetime to ask of a retired constitutional court judge at 90 some of those burning questions you always had and you always wanted to ask. Please do so now.
I'll give you the mic.
Hi, good evening, Judge Sachs. I'd just like your thoughts on what you think of this global rise of fascism in the world. And us as South Africans, being a very young democracy, what your views are on it. Because it seems as if democracy is really under attack all over the world. And we see the manifestation of it in a place like Gaza at the moment, and what your thoughts are on it.
Thank you, Ms. Cartigan.
I'll take you, please.
Anybody else?
Speaks and checkers.
Thanks, Judge. Good evening, everyone. Mine is not necessarily a question, but a multifaceted comment making on the questions that addressed. It speaks to the theme somewhat of tonight, not just the element of the lawyer in an anxious society. There is an assumption that just by virtue of being lawyers, that all of us subscribe to the South African Constitution, or that we are all constitutionalists. And this assumption is mistakenly goes unchallenged, despite the glaring reality that the South African Constitution, contrary to popular view, has not been panacea to social injustice in South Africa. 10 years later, the current realities are bare testimony to that the need for a real dialogue is a response to that unfolding reality. Two absurdities emanate from the South African Constitution. It is hailed as being the most progressive constitution in the world, the most progressive constitution in the world, which presides over a highly racialized inequality. The first absurdity. That constitution is deemed or touted to promote equality. You cannot promote or achieve equality if there is a protection of private property. They are contradictory, right? The Constitution, as the JP stated, emanates or is backed by Freedom Charter, the very same Freedom Charter whom some are selective in its application. the charter, though I reject it for political reasons, it also espouses an egalitarian society. But those who want to shove the freedom charter over us only choose the liberal aspects of it, and the aspect that they seek to achieve the egalitarian society, that is the nationalization of the economy, they reject it, right? So this is our current reality has got a historical trajectory, and it is a fallacy to still believe that the constitution, at least in its current form, will be the panacea and will be the answer to our the currently unfolding social justice. I said that I will not have a question. It's just a comment with which I would like your interaction. And I'm glad that you keep mentioning Philip Boston. For those who didn't know, he was 23 years at the time he led the March of Langa, and current demand is named after him, following that a milestone march. By the way, I'm a Pan African, and thanks
Thank you. And steady. Questions at the back there. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. Thank you, Judge Sachs. I see how somebody speaking. I just have a respective question. And I mean, two cases which is fundamental, for women's equality, for women's rights. So obviously, it didn't go the way we wanted to do. So first, it was the Jordan case. And then secondly, it was Hawks. And then thirdly, I know you didn't sit up with that particular case, which is A versus B. It was a Advocacy case. And your second was is that in relation to women's issues, many of these matters, 20 years later, we still don't have the basic partnerships, and we're still struggling. We still don't have the income of sex work. And secondly, in relation to the Advocacy case, the challenge that we're sitting with is that women, they need to be able to have, for example, a nurse pass. In addition to that, one particular issue that was raised by one of the judges was around the domicilium also of women in custody matters that still remains that of the male. And these are still things that are still 30 years later in our court system. And the challenge that we're sitting with is how do we deal with that? The Constitutional Court pronounced it. And just like that, you also mentioned you are just to be able to look at that because they still remain massive challenges for women at the end of the day, notwithstanding the Constitutional Court. It took us 20 years just for me to have to say. So thank you.
Okay, so that part you'll have to summarize. But I just want to, nothing this. There's some conflict in the when he's saying that the Constitution so that it's really something to offer the government's role versus the Constitution's role. It's
the rights 20 years later. That's not to be achieved. But I think one more question and then we can ask Judge Sachs to respond. This is the post registrar, the registrar. Thank you.
Thank you, Judge Sachs. It's such an honor to be here tonight. Thank you. And I know that as a young woman, so I appreciate your role that you played in us being able to practice and to be here this evening is such an honor. My question is maybe a little bit more lighthearted. And, they say that the more things change, the more they stay the same. Pre and post democracy, what is the thing for you that has stayed the same?
Thank you, Ms. Arnold. Is there any burning question? Other women?
Albie.
It's changed.
Yeah. Okay, Table Mountain has stayed the same. And it hasn't. In the worst days, I was a very keen mountaineer. And when I got my second banning order, I almost jumped for joy. It wasn't house arrest. I was restricted to paradise at the white areas of Cape Town. I couldn't park my car anymore. I was in one Dole Street and I used to park just in the walk-up. I couldn't drive into the walk-up into the criminal offence. I had to find a new parking area. It wasn't the worst thing that happened to me. But Sundays I'd be on Table Mountain. And I feel free on Table Mountain. And we had two clubs at the top. One for the whites, double story with water, electricity. Went down the thing of corrugated iron, you had to fetch your own water, but we had humanity and laughter and music and dance, so on. But I'd stand on Table Mountain and I would look down and I would hate what I saw. All the beautiful parts of Cape Town. Wonderful buildings, views of the sea, all that. And something awful happens when you hate beauty. You can't enjoy beauty. Now, well, when I came back from 24 years exile, I led up that mountain, the back way. And I felt I could stop looking at Cape Town now, without that hatred. I still feel it. It's still very unequal. But then it was not solidified. Now it's been challenged. And that whole issue even of spatial apartheid, very helpful, very SCA, with the Constitution, dying to know how they're going to come out. It's a long time they've been waiting there. But you can find we can resist. It's not law, it's not standard. I hated the law. The law was the source of oppression. Now the law is a potential for change. The Constitution is just a document, it's a piece of paper. But it's not just a piece of paper. The Constitution was the product of struggle. It was struggle to bring down the system of white supremacy. It was struggle to create a Bill of Rights. It was struggle by the women to include bodily integrity as an integral part of freedom. Freedom is not just freedom from being locked up. In the world, freedom is freedom free from violence, from public or private sources, and also bodily integrity and the right to make decisions on reputation in the Constitution. It saved thousands and thousands and thousands of lives. And people who believe in the sanctity of life from conception onwards can continue with their beliefs in their own conduct, their own family, their own faith. They're not prevented from doing that, but they can't impose their beliefs on society. These are huge gains, and they're gains of practical, immediate value, and enormously important. And if women organize and mobilize and protest, they know they do so with the support. And they also do so knowing that there are now 30, 40, 50% of women on the bench taking up these issues and responding to these issues. The woman judge president, the woman chief justice, these are not nothing. Those things haven't remained the same. They haven't remained the same. If I had a meeting on lawyers and prosecutors and so on when I was practicing at the bar, it would have been all white men in this room. I can see a couple of white men. Hi, guys. But you're not the norm, you're not the standard. In a way, you've been liberated, you've become South African human beings. the changes are huge. And part of me is delighted. We take those changes for granted. We take them for granted. Malcolm died, they were tortured to death, they were assassinated to get the right to vote. We take it for granted that the vote counts. That if the party loses, they step down. We take it for granted. It doesn't happen in Mozambique. People say it's not going to happen in Zimbabwe. It's not going to happen in Tanzania. It's huge. At least we can protest. At least we've got ways to bring about change. At least we can speak our minds. It's not an accident. Our biggest growth industry for a long time has been stand-up comedians. And you laugh, it's not just the right to laugh, it's the right to criticize it from all communities. People are not afraid to speak out. We take that for granted. Well, at the back there, he can put hard questions to me. Great. You want that right, you got that right. You're not going to be chucked out of your job for that. I don't know what your job is. If you're in private practice, you're not going to lose your clients because of that.
And if I appear before judges.
I didn't hear. Oh, he says he appears before judges. Are you an advocate?
Yes.
He's an advocate.
Yes. Oh, I'm the rent of appearance.
An attorney. He's an attorney, sorry.
Okay. So then you can do that. In the old days, you know, if you saw someone taking notes, now if I see someone taking notes and think, well, I'm clever, I've said something they can. Then you can go through to securities. You don't have that kind of surveillance and control. You might get it, who knows? But we don't have that. It's a vibrant, noisy, abrasive society that's very, very open. And for me, that's huge. And as long as that openness is there and we've got rights, I will feel confident about South Africa. When people say, you know, gender-based violence, for example, is so ugly, it's always been there. The difference now is it's announced, it's exposed, people protest. They don't just put up with it or gloss over it or say it's a private matter. It's painful. It's painful to know about all the corruption, the state capture. It's hugely painful. Sense of right to know. And then it's up to everybody in their different ways to use those rights. If you look at the text of the Constitution, there's nothing that prevents redistribution. The protections mentioned of property. It's the weakest property protection in the world. In the interim constitution, we had a right of everybody to hold and deal with and dispose of property. That was an entrenched right of property. Now the only right is not to be arbitrarily disposed of property, deprived of property. It's very, very unique. And most of the property clause is there designed to compensate for people who were deprived of property after 1912, strengthening titles that are very, very weak to bring about land reform. It's not the constitutions that's at fault standing in the way of change. It's failure to use the rights or to use the rights effectively and appropriately. That would be the problem there. So for me, I felt liberated when we got a constitution. I felt liberated as a human being, as a lawyer, as Albie. I felt in touch with law. I felt law could be emancipatory. Law wasn't just something for the rich and the powerful and the wealthy to protect their rights, even without apartheid. I wrote about it. I helped organize that. I defended the rights of workers, trade unions. Writing in the court, I tried to find imaginative ways of making social and economic rights realizable. But you can't do it from the court. It's got to be done through action in a different way completely. So the broad answer to the broad question is, look at South Africa today with so much unemployment, so much inequality, so much racism. True, those things are there. Is this the country we're fighting for? And I say, yes. It's the country that we're fighting for. It's not the society we're fighting for. The country gives us instruments, gives us rights. It gives us personality, gives us a point of reference that we can organize around and use. The society is in desperate need. So don't disregard the huge achievements of the past. Don't use the huge achievements of the past to justify the failures of the present. Use the achievements of the past to reinforce your intention, your confidence, your hope that life can be made better by people working together in the way that we solutions together, in the way we find solutions together to much heavier problems than we have today. Well, we made huge breakthroughs and achievements, and those achievements are so solidified, they're simply taken for granted as givens, on the basis of which we denounce other failures, totally it's a way of life. Society. I just get, look, I'm easily finding signs of hope. I look for them. I find them. Sitting in this room, just seeing yourselves. You don't know how changing it is. Yourselves are different. Yourselves, you're different people. You're asking different questions. You have different opportunities. The more things change, the more things change. They don't stay the same. They're different. They're very, very different. But the more things change, the more things need to be changed some more and more and more. And more. And more.
Judge, you can respond to this Kajika on the global changing fascism.
Yes.
Sorry, there was a question for you to reflect on the slow progress of women's equality and cases that the Constitution would have moved on, but from the lady at the back. But I'm not sure that
Well, on the theme of rights of women, well, the main point I'm making is that one of the biggest gains has been exposure of sexism, of abuse, denunciation, organization. It hasn't ended the femicide and the GDP, but it's pushing it back. And that's people fighting for their rights, and it's women-led with men's support, and that gives me encouragement. And the Constitution is there on that side. It's not blocking it. And it's there. Why? Because people like Freddie Chibwala and Declan Beatty and Catherine Mary Turok, who died actually on August 9th this year, and other women, a block of women in Parliament working with the National Coalition of Women outside Parliament and saying, today, Freddie was saying, today I'm not ANC, today I am a woman. I'm not the Speaker of the House, I'm a woman, Freddie. And they fought for those rights. And they fought to get non-citizen as a principle equal to non-racism, the only country that would do it. They fought to get customary law in, and not patriarchy, not entrenching patriarchy. Big battles at the time, not battles. Those battles continue to this day. They fought to get that. They fought to get rights of belief, conscience, religion, but not to exclude the equality provisions. They fought for social and economic rights that the men weren't so excited fighting. So the gender sensitivity is in the text of the Constitution and provides the instruments, the mechanisms for responding. And that's a huge gain. That's greatly positive. And that you can stand up as a bank and say that, great on you, great for doing that. Speak out, speak out, speak out, and organize. On the question of fascism, I prefer the word autocratic populism. Fascism had certain very specific features, and we don't want to hand it over to the populists. They even become fascist, because there was a lot of violence in fascism. The violence actually was central to the ideology and the practice of physical assassination and destruction, so on. Now it's autocracy through elections, coming into power, destroying institutions, destroying barriers. And it's important to distinguish because you have different responses. When it's fascism as violence, you have to go underground and find ways of mobilizing against it. When it's the autocratic populism, you can use other instruments of mobilization and strength and resistance. Gaza was mentioned. I was so proud of the South African team at the CJ. So proud. Okay, two of them were former law clerks. In terms of thought, of persuasiveness, composure, focus, that's something South Africa does well. And that's very related to our constitutional thinking and thinking in terms of rights, not in terms only of power, not only the political structure, but of rights. So that's a part of the response, to what we're saying. And that's what we do well, and that's what we I think, do best at. Is that all?
Is there any message? General questions? Awesome, Mike. That side.
Thank you, Judge. For taking time out this evening to be here. My name is Frank Weaver. And you mentioned in your first speech, you said the bar ethics were very strong. And today, it's almost on a weekly basis, we hear legal practitioners where they're either being accused of sexual harassment in the workplace or misappropriation of funds. What did you do? What's your comment on that? What did you do to entrench those strong ethics? Because at the moment, the profession seems to be, the public opinion is that there are no ethics amongst legal practitioners. Thank you, Judge.
Thank you, Counsel.
That's really not actually one of the achieve ethics.
Yes. Good evening, Judge. My name is Adrian Mark. I'm a member of the National Prosecuting Authority of South Africa. I like the way you characterize or contextualize our current struggles that the country is the one we've all through, but society is in need of change. And so we know that we need change agents to effect the change we want in society, and we can all see that. So the only question of the speaker advice was, I've been thinking, how do you, as a citizen, try to take that change, but you find yourself constrained by title or office? Because office will try to sometimes constrain you. You're not able to participate actively in that process of seeking change. So for people like myself who are constrained by title and office, what are your advice? How can we advance the course of change?
Thank you, Mr. Mark. Is there anybody else? Just have one day, and they can ask question on this office. So
More up there. Last one.
Often, it's easy to challenge inequality and injustice when it's in your face. And I find in listening to you that it was easier not to take away from your struggle, but it was easy to fight injustice when it was that much obvious and in your face. But I find today our struggle is to explain to people the injustices that is being experienced by our people. So my question to you, Judge Sachs, is what is your play as a retired judge to kind of remind the bench currently of the injustices that was experienced and the platform that is fought to change the Constitution now and to promote the values of the Constitution? The second thing is also what can be done, because often on the bench now, you'll have persons that went to a voluntary school, went to a good school, that didn't experience the social injustices of yesteryear. So what can be done to remind them, take them back to the struggles, to appreciate and uphold the values of the Constitution?
Thank you. Mr. Hendricks. And there's, you be our last. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Judge Mabindla, for being present. I'm not sure, I'm going to assume that you perhaps follow what's happening in the profession. Insofar as a few cases, I'm only going to mention one. The one is the challenge to the legal sector code. Now that challenge is being brought by a big law. Well, let me not say who those firms are. Inasmuch as they profess to be key proponents, at least supporters of the transformation project, isn't there an inherent incongruency in their attempt to unsettle what has been worked for the past probably 4 years or so? Yeah, speaking specifically to the code and what the code are supposed to represent. So I would love to have your views then on that inherent incongruency.
So you get in front.
Mine is a very stupid question because I don't have children landlords. And I wanted to know whether you want every read today in the decision on Mabindla. Today we find that there was a 4-year-old that was raped and by the father and killed. And then now would you have decided a death penalty differently if it were today? Because now I see those were the games of the past. And today was serving in Mabindla judgment, children are dying and nothing's happening. People are taken out of prisons, people are being crime outside again. So don't you regret that decision?
Given current violence, do you regret the Boqwana case?
Then the last one at the back there.
Yes.
Thank you, please.
My question is related to transformational society, as you mentioned earlier. But we speak about transformation so often in the profession. And at this point, it's one of those questions that is going to come up and we're going to circle around what transformation actually means like. So my question to you would be, what advice would you give to What advice would you give?
You are young, completely.
What advice would you give to where we possibly trying to effect some transformation, some real transformation, or even where wants to incorporate activism in their practice? What advice is there to do that? But also considering the possibility that it may not be acceptable in certain spaces. Maybe here doing the practice, maybe something needs to actually be done about that. Because you also your censorship that would affect practice if they actually want to engage in spaces like that.
Thank you. Ladies, we said it's the last
Messages.
from the Office of the Director of Public Prosecution as well. You've been our host here tonight. Is there anything you wish to raise with your colleagues or Judge? There's the microphone coming.
Thank you, firstly, Justice Sachs, for being here, honoring with your presence. But going back to the past, some of us lived through it, some of us remember the day and where we are today. We recognize the strides we have made. By the time we feel we're right back there, and it's really upon us to see what changes we can make. Can we bring a difference? Yeah, because we all have that when you're going to court, that nervousness. Are they going to mention a case that I should know, that I don't know about? And my worst nightmare has also always been waking up to hear the court, I should be at court, and it's, we've all had that dream. So it was kind of a reassurance that we're on the right track. I listened to the Daily Maverick, the gathering today, and there our national director also spoke, and she was taking task about what's the NPA doing, what are we doing about corruption, are we a failure? And there were journalists who are forcing it to say we are a failure, we are responsible with the NPA postponements. And she rightfully pushed back. And I thought, how exciting, how good that we can push back and the NPA can account and we can reassure the country that we're doing good work and that there is progress. So everybody in the room, and especially to prosecutors, be your bound with honor. Do your best every day. And to our opponents in court, we expect you to bring it on. Because you are doing good work. So the system will be unequal if everybody don't do their part. So don't push over by the prosecution. It's supposed to be our job. Legal, and we expect you to push back. That's the only way the system will work. To the judiciary, there's some challenges. But I like the question that my one colleague here asked is, do the judiciary go on social context training? Because sometimes we find it's lacking. So it's all of those things that it might not be all white, the bench, but there are challenges there as well. It's not a perfect NPA, it's not a perfect system, but because all it's gatherings like this that really help and make us think, why have we chosen this provision? It's to make a difference in the ordinary South Africa. So that's how I see it. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you as well. We have with the prosecutors. There's leadership. And lastly, we have leadership of the Land Court. And the Land Court is, is one of the most important institutions in our democracy. And I'm sure the PAC will complain and say they have not achieved too much. There are many, not even in the PAC, who says, well, there are serious challenges, and land redistribution is one of the challenges. We've legalized it, we've made it so complicated. people have to fight and wait for years. Leadership of the Land Court, would you like to share any comment?
On the spot.
I mean, many people don't know this is Justice Susie Cowan, and that she's in the leadership of the Land Court. It's a privilege to
I'm being on the spot. Well, yeah, I love listening to Albie talk. I've often heard Albie talk. And I think for me, the challenge is to really think about how we're going to use those lessons today. Because our challenges are different. I have a lot of confidence in the Constitution. I've seen, I graduated in 1994, and I've seen a lot of these fights in court played out, and I've watched the victories come through. Even in land, I've been listening to the gentleman in the back. I see people coming to our courts every day bringing amazing, interesting arguments. And for me, it's about a vitalized civil society, which is what Albie was saying. It's a vital civil society with people fighting for rights, bring the cases to us, argue the cases. We hear. I'm interested in the challenge of our social politics training. Bring it on. And I think we're all very open to it. We bring this about keeping our society vibrant.
Thank you, Justice.
I think they've answered all your questions.
Can I just say something? One of the things that we can take home from the speech is that we are the drivers of change. We should not blame the Constitution for the failures of today. It is there for us to use. And I think it's very important for us to give that to it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Justice. I'll be the final comments before Judge Ali says good night to her.
They basically covered it.
I was going to fall back on my lack of hearing. But now I've heard some very good responses from the floor. Actually, it does induce very modesty in my part. I've got to learn from you guys. These are issues of the days. I'm not particularly expert on the issues of the day. Some I can't comment on. Some of all the courts now is very imperfect. But I really just don't know. If you want to know what the legal status was in 1966 when I was still at the bar, I'm the guy to go to. But if you want to know what's going on today, I've got to listen to the source. But I can convey something, and that's a kind of confidence we built up over the years. We had very dark days. Our organizations were smashed, our people were being killed, everything was banned. It really looked so bleak compared to what I'm hearing now. I don't want to say it's peanuts, anybody's hurt is important at the time it is to you. But we overcame much bigger problems. And we've got problems from inside ourselves, inside our own country. There were more people armed, black people armed on the other side than on our side. Huge numbers. And some of us, that gave away. It's too much to handle. Some of us became so narrow-minded and tunnel-minded, we lost our humanity. Huge problems along the way. But we kind of got through. We got through. There were enough good people, enough good values, and the values in themselves were intrinsically the right ones. And those values are as important today as they were then and will be in future. That's what I can speak about. And I can speak about hope in a way is self-fulfilling. It gives you a buoyancy. You find other people you can connect with. It's more fun, actually. It's more exciting to find solutions than simply to become somebody denunciating. I'm in favor of denunciations. I'm in favor of exposure. I'm in favor of shaming where it has to happen. But so much of the movement of the struggle is dour and long-faced and gloomy. And we always had that spark, even on Robben Island, there was that spark of optimism and working together and belief in the future. And the future we believed in terms of constitutional trade came to pass. It's happened. Now there's a lot of gloom. There's a lot of stuff that's so ugly and so terrible, it's so shameful, we have to denounce it. But there's a lot of humanity. There's humanity in this room, don't tell me there is. And you've got to build on that humanity, you've got to build on that belief. Somebody asked, how did we get through manage? Part of it was developing. It's a true optimism based not just on beautiful ideas, based on achievement. So we treasure the achievement. We treasure those who came before us. We treasure those who gave their belief. We've built on that. And if I've got a contribution to make now, it's to just try and communicate that there's no problem human beings make with human beings can't resolve. And we can find ways of doing that. We found, the story of the Constitution is being written up at last. There was so much ingenuity, so much creativity, so much thoughtfulness, two-stage process, principles, Constitution coming in. It seemed impossible when I used to go around the states denouncing apartheid. Right on. When I used to say one day we're going to have non-racial democracy, people's first place. Are you serious? We got that. We brought down the system of white domination, white supremacy. We haven't destroyed racism, we haven't destroyed inequality, but we achieved immense changes that seemed impossible before. So I hear what's being said. I wish I had answers. I don't have answers. It's important for me to listen, but it's not taking away my hard-won right to be optimistic. I've won it myself. And it's not going to be taken away by what I'm hearing. And it's not only achieves things, it actually makes life more pleasurable to have that sense of hope and to find other people with that sense of hope. We had to put ourselves on the line. We had to risk being blown up and whipped off the streets and thrown into solitary confinement and sleep deprivation and statelessness, all of which happened to me, a privileged white person. You don't have to risk that now. You've got your rights, you've got your choices, you've got your possibilities to work ways forward. Use them, enjoy them. And then the next generation, people come along and they're undermining you. You'll have some of that Albie Sachs chutzpah.
Thank you so much. Thank you. We're now coming to the closure and we're going to hand over to Judge Roshni Ali to do the vote of thanks. Those of you who don't know, Judge Ali is on the brink of retirement and she leaves us at the Cape High Court. My saying is that after many years of just being such a great colleague and just being a great judge, those of you who have appeared before know how serious and astute and well-prepared Judge Ali has been as a judge. Many of you were dead scared of appearing before. But that's a sign of the fact that the judge was well-prepared. I just wanted to mention also that we have camera crew, and if you might not know, one of the camera crew is Adam Asmal, and that is the late Kader Asmal's youngest son. And Kader must smile on this. Just smile wherever he is on this gathering here tonight, knowing that the legal profession is in good hands with all of you here tonight. And the last thing that we need to share, JP, about that says, is that there's a meteorite. Is that?
It's a meteorite, yes.
It's a
14957 is the number.
14957. There's a meteorite that has been named after Justice Sachs.
It's a thing flying around in the universe.
The object that it is on that. Like before, there were two kinds of loans. The number 29,442.
14957.
And this is the wonderful thing
I know.
about apartheid, is that you can have
Asteroid, it's an asteroid.
you can have a judge, retired judge of the Constitutional Court, who is an asteroid. It's wonderful. And they said, you
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry, and just to say that we've built, when Albie turned 90, we thought what present to give him because he's never celebrated a birthday before. And so this year, for 2 years, we've been working on building the Albie collection so that in time to come, when people want to hear his voice, they can actually just visit this website. It's a curated conspectus of the life, love, law, literature, and laughter. And we're going to add lessons learned of Albie Sachs. And if you scan this QR code, I'm going to pass these around. Scan the QR code, it takes you to the website. There's a particular section under law. It's the compendium of judgments. Albie written 65 judgments. There are 70 15-minute video segments in which he has a conversation with Tammy Matthews about the different judgments, setting the context, defining the issues, and discussing how the ticking of a single line helps him arrive at a decision. So for those of you who want to know how judges think or learn or prepare yourself for your case, that's perhaps a resource for you. Okay, so and there's a whole lot of it as well. So I'll hand these out. I'll leave it some more. I'm going to just leave a couple like that, like that.
Good evening, everybody. Obviously, mine is the easiest social jobs. But I just want to say, I think you have heard both from Justice Sachs and from the leadership of our division, our judge president, as well as the land claims court and Advocate Bar, that clearly the challenge for you tonight is to go back and think of how you can be catalysts for change. Because as I've said often, and many of you may have heard, that each of you who are lawyers are in fact leaders in society. You are leaders in your own right. So now there's what's been demonstrated and what's been related to you is how you can creatively create space for argument, for example, to access more rights for people who are suffering under gendered discrimination and GBV, people who are suffering from land dispossession and the rest and the like. So I think what we take away from here tonight is that there is a need for you to take the struggle, as it were, forward in a different manner. And from this mark, I'd just like to say, the NPA is doing amazing work. Remember, it's not only in corruption-related matters, but in every criminal matter that the NPA succeeds in. It is, in fact, an achievement, because what it means is that the NPA is assisting in having this country claw back its integrity, its safety, and to create the space for people to access those very rights contained in the Constitution. So your contribution is not minimal by virtue of the fact, and you're not constrained by virtue of the fact of your position. And we must, of course, acknowledge, as the judge president said, the suffering and the hardship that many of the people in the NPA have had to endure, and we acknowledge the loss of people I know in the Eastern Cape that have been brutally murdered as a result of the work they do. And that is precisely why you are leaders in your own view. And so too, we've had private practitioners who have murdered. We've had people who have stood up as whistleblowers that have been murdered. Those are the leaders of society, and there's a space for you to also participate and do something about it. So it's not a matter of saying what is the Constitution doing now, what is the bench doing now. It's a question of what are you going to do to access those rights and to create more space and for people to access those rights. Then I do thank Justice Sachs for coming out, and we know it's been a long day, and we have to excuse it, certainly, and we want to express our appreciation for you sharing and in an honest and open manner with us your experiences, and so that we can learn therefrom. And I think we can all take something away from that, and we are very appreciative of that. We also appreciate the fact that you've created a living memory that can continue for eternity in the form of a website. We're appreciative of your camera crew who are recording all of this so that future generations will have access to precisely this. And then, of course, we are very appreciative of Albie Sachs' wife, Vanessa, for the support, as you can see, and more than support, active involvement in making this presentation a success. We also want to thank our Judge Mabindla-Boqwana. As you all know from the Western Cape, this is the first event of this nature hosted by a judge president in the Western Cape. And we feel that this is the kind of vision that and leadership that the judiciary going forward is able to offer. And people should take advantage of that and come and lend their support. We'd also like to thank all the members of the Office of the Chief Justice for the untiring work in putting this evening together. And of course, we have to thank the DPP and the staff for making facilities available, for turning up, participating, and we hope that in the future that our stakeholder relationships will obviously strengthen. I think it's important that we thank the participants who turned up. It's a cold winter's night, people. It's literally the end of the week. The week is looming, but you've showed up. You've turned up, and that speaks volumes. I think you need to keep yourself in a warm round. I would like to say to Justice Sachs and Vanessa, in our humble, cash constrained way, and some fears, Vanessa, and the one is a peace lady. So remember the Western Cape High Court and state of peace. And one thing. In addition to that, arbitration, this very fast, and the driver on set. Thank you.